Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Red Robot project. In this episode we'll be designing the components for the robot. So we've got 2 batteries and the Raspberry Pi and the motor controller which needs placing on here. If you've not watched any of the episodes so far, please feel free to catch up on episodes 1 and 2 before we go into this episode. On episode 1 I drew the basic structure for the metal chassis for the robot, this part here. And in episode 2 I started bringing in these components. I drew the basic outline of these 2 battery boxes and the motor controller. Also added the wheels and the servo housings to the metal chassis that we drew in episode 1. Alright, with that let's begin. So what I've noticed on our Raspberry Pi, it does actually have a female header on here, which is not what we want. So I'm going to see if we can alter that. Open it in a separate window, which interestingly enough when we click on there it's not actually there, so we should just be able to remove it quite easily. Gone. First things first, I'm going to get this motor controller placed onto the Raspberry Pi. So when I took it off the Raspberry Pi in episode 1, it was sat on the Pi like so. Okay, so that's motor controller more or less where it should sit. Might be a tiny bit out, but it's good enough for what we need. I think what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to try and roughly place these in positions where I want them to check that all the ports, especially on the Raspberry Pi, are accessible. Got to remember which side the wires are coming out of there. Flat side. So that's very roughly where I want the components. I think what I'm going to do next, I'm going to draw this housing for this central one. I'm going to draw it separately, then I'm going to bring it in. I'll have to remove all the constraints I've just put on this component and then put it inside the new housing that we make. Right, I'm going to leave the holes for fixing till later. I'm going to bring that into the main model. So that's the battery inside a basic housing. What I'm thinking eventually I'll draw in some Velcro straps, or at least the slots are inserted Velcro straps so there can be something to actually keep it in place, but it's quite a snug fit that, hopefully, when we get going. So I think that should be fine for now. Alright, so next I'll draw the holder for the second battery.
Slightly different for the Raspberry Pi, I'm thinking an L-shaped bracket, which would eventually screw into here.
Going to need standoffs, but I'm just not going to draw them in. So that's the gap that's going to be left for the standoffs, and yeah, a bit of collision. That's a problem. Okay, so the next thing we've got to do, we've got to find out how we're going to be fixing these to the thing. I don't know if you saw in episode 1, but I drew these pretty accurately, but we won't be super accurate, so I'm going to put slots in and things for the fixing positions, and then we're going to have to work out something where I can screw the holders together but still have the screws accessible, so I can still screw them in using screwdrivers, but that's the next step.
Thank you for watching. As always, links are in the description. Coming up next, we'll be adding the fastening holes to the new component holders. See you in the next episode.